Request everyone who wants to be seated and ready to go. Is AGP ready? Okay, good. I hereby call this meeting to order, the regular meeting of the Cambria Community Services District on Thursday, May 16th. Would you please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? All 5 directors are present, and so we have a quorum. And I actually have a brief president's report today regarding public comment. We have decided, the general manager and I and other people in charge of the meetings, to go back to the policy regarding written comment that I think was in effect before COVID, which is that written comments will still be turned in and put into the record, but they'll not be read aloud at the meeting. And there are a couple of reasons for this. One is that it's sometimes difficult to tell how long a written comment is going to end up being when our board secretary reads it. And basically in consideration of people's time, we don't want to have the risk of very long letters being read or letters being cut off in the middle. And the other issue has come up is some people don't always like the way things are read. In other words, if titles are left off, names and things like that. So we want to avoid these complexities. And so, and also to encourage people, if they wish to say something, to say it in person, and they can still do this, say it online. In other words, speak in their own voice and be in control of what they're saying. So I think we want to go back, which was an old policy. We want to go back to it because I don't think there's any necessity for it. Now, these letters will still be posted online with the record of the meeting, so you'll be able to see them and they'll be able to have them in the permanent record. But we also won't read them aloud during comment sections, either in public comment or during comment on business items. And that's all my message for today. This policy, by the way, will take effect at the next meeting. So stuff that's been turned in today will be read, but that will be the last time. Moving on to agenda review, is there any item on this agenda that members of the board would want to have moved or deleted? Hearing none. Move on. Oh, Vice President Scott.
Yes, I just wanted to add one thing to that, and then the board members will receive a copy of those written comments.
Yeah, this will be, I think the policy will be that the written comments will be turned into the board members before the meeting.
Okay.
In time for the meeting. And of course, comments that come in later, you can't really do that. But yeah, they'll be submitted to the board members. In fact, we'll be getting them. And please, Ms. Dodson, yeah.
And they are also posted on the website after the meeting.
Yeah, posted after the meeting, but we'll have copies that come in before the meeting will come to us. Yeah. I'll take board member communications now. If any member of the board has a brief announcement or a question, Director Thomas.
Thank you, President Gray. Just briefly, from the NCAC meeting last night, lots of energy, lots of discussion about the March 9th dog attack and concerns regarding the inadequate response from County Animal Services. Likewise, lots of concern regarding the abandoned house at 343 Harvey Street. And notably, the general manager and utilities manager, in response to questions from the NCAC, provided a very thorough, informative 40-minute discussion and Q&A regarding the history of the water reclamation facility and the permitting challenges in everything WRF related. In fact, Director Farmer commented at the meeting that this has been the best discussion on this topic he's seen perhaps in a while. And for anyone interested in listening, the discussion started at 7:52 p.m. 1 hour and 50 minutes into the NCAC recording, and it really was. Kudos to general manager and utilities manager. I mean, they questions from all angles and very informative. And in other news, Saturday, Anyone who needs a good workout, I'll be hosting another ice plant removal work party. If y'all want to come gather 9 a.m. at the Sea Cliff, the North Windsor entrance, in north end of the Marine Terrace Trail. Great opportunity to make friends, and I guarantee, it's the best workout you'll get, and there's no charge.
Thank you, Director Thomas. Director Dean.
I want to agree with what Director Farmer said at the NCAC and what Director Thomas just said. The recording of the NCAC meeting is now on YouTube. It's live. I watched it earlier today, and I want to thank our general manager and our utilities manager for the excellent job they did answering all of the questions and explaining all of the challenges that we are facing with the WRF CDP. And we also had compliments from the county, from Jeremy, and I'm sorry, I don't know his last name, but the county planner that's working with the district on this. And it's a very worthwhile discussion for the public to sign in on YouTube and listen to. It was very, very informative, and I thank you both for doing that.
Thank you. Director Farmer.
Yeah, thank you. I do want to add one more point to that. The fact that our staff, our general manager and Mr. Green did an excellent job, but I think what made it more complete was the fact that Jeremy Friend from the county also participated in a very knowledgeable and even-keeled fashion. And there was a member of the public, I think his name is Jeff Bloom, and I think the four of them together, Jeff, kind of came in at the end, but the four of them together all added a particular dynamic that made this a very thoughtful and thorough discussion of this particular topic that has so many different ways that people are interpreting what's going on. So I think for those folks out there in the public that still are questioning, well, what's really going on with regard to the WRF and the application for the CDP application, watching this should clarify a lot of issues and present the situation in as honest and how could I say it, thoughtful a fashion than I've ever seen. I just want to say that. One more thing also, with regard to this Saturday, there's going to be a donation drive, kind of a fundraiser for Beautify Cambria. I don't know how many folks are aware of what Beautify Cambria has done over the years, including all the planter boxes that we have here in town, weeding that takes place here and there, the sidewalk in front of True Earth Market. So I just want to say this coming Saturday, May 18th, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Santa Rosa Catholic Church, just right up the street here on Main Street. It's kind of like I say, a fundraiser in the sense, drop off anything that you have, some kind of gently used item in one fashion or another that ultimately Beautify Cambria will use to their benefit and to benefit others. So there you are. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Farmer.
And have a blessed weekend. Whether you're pulling ice plant or going to the Beautify Cambria donation or whatever.
Or both.
Or both.
Or both, yeah, there you go.
Thank you all. Vice President Scott.
Yes, thank you. And on Sunday, the Cambria Community Chorale has their second concert at 2 o'clock from 2 to 4. And the best part of the concert is that I play the cowbell. So more cowbell.
More cowbell, more
Yeah.
cowbell, yeah.
So I would invite you to come. If you need tickets, you can get in touch with me. You can go online and get the tickets, but you can buy tickets at the door. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any more comments from the directors? No. So let's move on to public safety. The Sheriff's Department report is Commander McDonald here.
Yes, sir.
Oh, there you are. Thank you.
I'm
Welcome.
on Zoom.
Hi.
President Gray, members of the board, staff, and the public. I apologize for not being there in person today. My previous meeting ended at a time that made it imprudent to try and drive up there without violating traffic laws. So for the month of April, in Cambria, we responded to one assault and battery case. That was a domestic violence related case. We had 12 disturbances, which included 9 general disturbances, 2 loud music complaints, and 1 family dispute. We had 2 burglaries. One was an attempted vehicle burglary, the second being a residential burglary. There were 4 thefts. 3 of those were petty thefts with a value of loss under $950, and 1 grand theft with a value over $950. There were 3 vandalisms reported. 1 was graffiti, 1 was damage to a vehicle, and the 3rd was damage to a fence. We had 1 incident reported of mail theft, and that was out off of Purdy Creek Road, out Santa Rosa Creek. We had no phone scams reported to us. However, I know that they continue to come in, and people are dealing with them so frequently that it's very probable that they just stopped calling us to report all the efforts that have been made to try and scam them out of money. We had 4 suspicious circumstance calls, 3 of those being suspicious circumstances and 1 being suspicious persons. There were 17 enforcement stops, which included 13 vehicle stops and 4 pedestrian stops. And then for preventative patrol activity, the deputies engaged in 9 on-site activities, 5 parked vehicle investigations, which is a new metric that we're reporting, and that's basically checking on vehicles that are parked maybe in a no parking zone or a no camping zone at night. 2 patrol checks, 3 foot patrols, and 1 extra patrol. And that concludes my report, and I'm available for any questions or concerns.
Thank you, Commander McDonald. Yes, any board members with questions? I believe Director Farmer has one.
Thank you, President Gray, and Commander McDonald, thank you. I'm sorry you're not here in person, but I'm glad you're doing well nevertheless. So I have 2 questions. One about the grand theft that you spoke about. Was that at a residence or was that at a business? Knowing that we had a pretty large one at one of the local businesses a month or 2 ago.
That grand theft, I don't have the details in front of me. I believe it was a residential. Yes, if I recall correctly, it's residential, not commercial.
All right, and the second one, and I would have hoped you would have been here so I could have asked you ahead of time if I could actually ask you about this. But I think I'll do it anyway, only because when this took place, folks were saying to me, do you have any idea what's going on, Harry? So apparently someone was found deceased. I believe it was out on Santa Rosa Creek Road. And the people who live out there didn't have any details as to who it was, what the circumstances were, and it's never been in the news. Do you have any information, even if limited, that you could provide with regard to this particular situation?
Yes. That we don't normally report on coroner's cases. That situation was a suicide that occurred out there, and that's not all I can say about it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Director Farmer. Any other questions from the board members? I had a question about a topic that was mentioned in Dr. Thomas's report on the NCSC meeting, but it's been kind of something that's been occupying us for the last couple of weeks, the abandoned house or the empty house on Harvey Street. I have a question about role of law enforcement in a situation like that. If you're a neighbor of a house like that and you believe that illegal activities going on, for instance, trespassing. You're not the owner, it's an absentee owner, but if you're the neighbor and you feel that law enforcement should maybe get involved, if people are, say, using the house for, sleeping in it or whatever, or not supposed to be there, can you, is that something you can have law enforcement look into if you're not the owner, if just a neighbor?
Yes. If you notice people on the property, and have, any suspicion that they may not be properly there, that would definitely, be something that you could call into our non-emergency line. I've actually added that address, for extra patrol. Last night during that discussion, I jotted down the address, and, so we will be having additional patrol, of that particular, block.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because I know you also report to the NCC, of course, and so I'm sure you were apprised of it, but I was kind of curious about that one aspect of it. Thank you.
Right, yeah, no, absolutely. If somebody's trespassing on that property, regardless of whether the owner, is absentee or not, we're more than happy to investigate, determine if that person has any connection to the owner. If not, then, we have ways of contacting the owner and let them know, there might be a trespassing problem, or if they, might need to do some additional work to secure their property.
Okay, thank you. Is there any public comment on the law enforcement report?
No.
No one in the hall and no one online? Okay, thank you. Well, thank you, Commander McDonald.
Okay, I'll see you next month up there.
We will, thank you. Moving on to the fire, CCSD Fire Chief's report, Chief Berkey. Thank you.
Good afternoon, President Gray, members of the board, members of the staff, community. This is a report for April. We had one vegetation fire, very small, south of town here. We had a total of 61 rescue and EMS calls, one motor vehicle accident, 5 service calls, one smoke check, smoke in the area. Good intent calls, we had 13 of those, false alarms of 7, severe weather and disaster for 3, and that totaled 90 calls total for the month of April. So I wanted to kind of recap a little bit of last week. I wanted to take a moment to thank the board for allowing me to swear in our new employee. That's always a huge honor for me to be able to do that, and I wanted to thank you guys for allowing me to have that opportunity.
It was our pleasure.
It's a great thing. And just to point out, we are fully staffed up at the fire department for the first time in over 5 years. So that's a huge thank you to not only the board, but our general manager, staff, and our community, of course. So I really wanted to say a huge thank you for that. Also, I wanted to touch base. We had what I considered a very successful wildfire preparation day on Saturday. I thought that went very well. It was very well attended by our community, and it was a very proud moment for me to see the community get as involved as they are with fire preparation, so wildfire preparation. So I really appreciate that, and myself and general manager were there to witness that event, so it was really great. Lastly, this Sunday, I wanted to make the public aware that we have the Ironman, Morro Bay is putting on their 2nd annual Ironman event. It's going to come through our town, probably between the hours of 8 and 1. So just wanted to make the public aware that the Highway 1 is going to be shut down for quite a while. So it's, you might be able to pass through it every now and then. I'm working with CHP right now, and I'm actually leaving this meeting to go down to a planning event down in Morro Bay for that Ironman event. So I'll have more information. We're definitely going to be sending out some notifications via social media and our website. So just wanted to inform the public and let them know that that's going to be going on. So just try and stay off the roads as much as possible during that time on Sunday.
Okay.
With that, that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you.
I'm open to any questions.
Well, any questions? Vice President Scott.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Do you have any idea, Chief Berkey, and thank you for a wonderful report, but why the rescue and EMS increased so drastically?
I don't, and it's just one of those things. Sometimes it's lower, sometimes it's higher. It just depends on the the influx of tourism sometimes. I know Highway 1 is open back up at the end of this month, I believe. I can't remember the exact date. But with all of that, yeah, it just varies. It really does. There's no real rhyme or reason.
Yes. Dr. Farmer.
Yes, Chief Berkey, I just want to ask you with regard to the Ironman event, could you just give us some, I'm picturing like people running or bicycling. Is it like a combination of those factors or what?
Yeah, so the Ironman's all three. So the swim is going to be in Morro Bay. It's going to take place in the harbor. And then the run, actually, I correct myself. So right after that, they go into the bicycling event. So they go straight from the water right onto the bicycle, and that's when they start heading up. That's the part that's going to come through Cambria. They're going to do a loop up above San Simeon, go all the way back down into Morro Bay, and then they're going to conclude with a run in Morro Bay, downtown by the Embarcadero, I believe.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And Dr. Dean. No, Dr. Dean first, then. Yeah.
Congratulations on being fully staffed.
Yes, thank you.
And I took quite a few pictures of the swearing in. If your new firefighters' families would like to have those pictures.
I forwarded them. Yes, thank you so much for taking those. Those were great, yeah.
Yeah, Director Thomas.
Thank you, President Gray. Two questions. And first, tell us about the vegetation fire.
It was a small, astonishingly enough, as wet as it is, and that's really all it did. It just kind of smoldered on the side of the road, but it was enough to get a response. And so I believe it was started from a vehicle that had a chain dragging behind it, and so that's created a spark, threw it off into the vegetation, and created that.
The location?
It was just south of Highway 1, or just south of 46 on Highway 1, right on the right-hand side, between 46 and Harmony.
Thanks. Yeah, and
Very, very small, but it was worth mentioning. So.
thanks. And you know, curious, what is the action plan to inspect the interior of the abandoned house on Harvey Street? You know, given the history, the lack of intention, and you know, it seems timely to get an inspection warrant. And at Mr. O'Grady's request, I dropped by for a second time this morning, and you know, looking in, you've been there, so you know that slot. You can see the open rafters roof. There are portions of the house that are not covered by sheetrock.
Yeah, and so I was there yesterday, and I kind of was evaluating the property as best I can. I didn't, you know, try to be as courteous and lawful as I could, not tromping through the property. But it does look like they've put up some effort to keep people out. Obviously, that gate's there, but it's open. You know, when I walked over, it was completely open. So as far as the interior is concerned, as far as fire hazard, it sounded like the county did investigations and they found that the structure to be not a threat as far as collapse or any sort of fire hazard that they noted. Having said that, my focus is going to be on just that, trying to see what we can do. The exterior is a no-brainer. We can look at that. And, you know, the owner is going to have to maintain that property as if someone was living there. They're going to have to, you know, take the defensible space, you know, precautions. And but as far as the interior, I'm still investigating as far as like what we can do and what fire hazards really present themselves. So usually if we're looking at electrical or we're looking at any sort of like, the power has been completely cut off to that residence. So that wouldn't even be applicable at that point. So if the power is on, now we have an issue. But since it's been off, it's been discontinued by PG&E, then that doesn't become an issue anymore. But again, I'm not an expert when it comes to those specific codes, but I will do my due diligence and investigate those, and see what I can find and see what we can do. And I definitely am sympathetic to the community's concern with that building. And if there's anything we can do, we're going to do it.
And I'll follow up on that, Director Thomas.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Gentlemen, yeah,
Yeah.
you're done. Oh,
I just appreciate and right. And yeah, the exterior fence right, the neighbors close it up, then they can find it open again, and folks who are inhabiting are probably clever enough to avoid,
Yeah, and
but there's, we're concerned about people camping in our forests. We find LPG tanks, et cetera. And so I just, it just kind of smells like this. If a fire marshal, a fire chief were inside and looked around, odds of finding something that could be out of code.
absolutely, yeah, and
Oh, and also I wanted to mention what I heard from Supervisor Gibson. He was very careful with his words that code enforcement inspected and found no code violations of health and safety. And he specifically said, regarding the concern about a fire hazard, we leave that to the CCSD. In other words, he inferred that the county in no way was representing that the house was not a fire hazard.
correct.
So that's on.
Yeah, that's on us. That's our purviews. That's the direction we will be going with it. The problem is a trespassing issue. We need to be able to make sure that we can lawfully enter that residence, whether it's abandoned, the doors are completely, when I was there yesterday, the rear door was completely wide open. You can see it from, on Gaines Street and just looking at it. And there's been rocks thrown through it. It's been completely destroyed. So it's completely open, whether there's, it's inhabited or not, we can't, say, but there was nobody there when I was there. And as far as being able to go onto that property, that's where we're really kind of legally bound. We need to make sure that we're following the correct procedures for that. Once we have the authority to do that, then we can definitely evaluate those fire hazard issues. Move forward.
General Manager McElhaney wanted to expand on that point on that, right?
Thank you, President. Great. We were on NCAC meeting, and all of these comments are correct. The chief is also correct that he has to have a reason to go on into the property, and without violating the law, he's got to have a pretty good reason. But speaking with Supervisor Gibson, we are going to reach out to code enforcement and see if there can be a joint effort of going into that residence, which will give chief access to it. And then he will apply any of the fire codes that are violated. And from there, we can move forward with action. But the chief is correct. He's in a tight position by not having the authority to enter the residence.
Yeah. Thank you. Vice President Scott.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Do we know if there's anybody who's living in there illegally?
No, I mean, it's hard to tell,
Okay.
not being able to walk into the property it's difficult.
Okay.
So, again, the gate's open, the rear door has been completely broken, shattered. So, I wouldn't be surprised, but I have no idea.
Okay, thank you.
Director Dean.
I believe Supervisor Gibson mentioned, or it was someone from the code enforcement, that if there was any kind of indication that someone was trespassing on the property, that they could call the sheriff's department's non-emergency line.
Yep.
And that they would go and check it out. And that might be a way for you to also be able to go into the building, I would think, if the sheriff came out. Do you think?
Yeah, maybe. Again, I'd have to look at, I'm not familiar with the laws as far as that's concerned, but if the sheriff department comes out there, they're going to be enforcing the trespassing laws. I don't believe that would give me the authority to go in and start investigating the fire hazards. But again, we can work with the county, work with the sheriff's department and see what we can do. But yeah, it gets really kind of sensitive around that stuff. So.
Yeah. Any other questions? Any the board? No questions from the board. Any public comment? Either in the hall here, in person, or online?
No.
Okay, thank you. Well, wait, a hand is up. Ms. Heinrichs?
I personally have not touched base with the owner yet, and General Manager McElhaney and I have discussed that, and we reaching out. It's essentially the only information that I have is a PO box to send them a letter. So there's no phone number listed that we have.
It's somebody who does not live in Cambria.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or no more questions or comment? Thank you, Chief Berkey, and for a great report. Good answers to the questions, too. Thank you. Now we'll move on to public comment. This is for comment on issues that are in our purview but are not on this agenda. I have a speaker slip for Christine Heinrichs. Before I go on, if there's any written comment on record for this segment of the meeting, we will read them this time, but this will be the last time we do that. But if people want to speak online, they still obviously can do so, and obviously speak in person. So Ms. Heinrichs, please come up.
Thank you. The Resources and Infrastructure Committee voted to forward to the board a proposal to apply to PG&E's EV fleet program to assist the district with constructing charging infrastructure and purchasing electric vehicles. It is set to be presented to the board at the June 13th meeting. I asked the board members to study this carefully before the meeting and decide against applying for it. PG&E is not your friend. You pay them around $50,000 a month for power. Of course they want you to continue that and even pay them more. John Oliver on his program characterized PG&E as the most hated public utility in the country. I'll send you the link. PG&E has pled guilty to numerous criminal charges, paid millions in fines because of its irresponsible behavior. The district recently found paying the local school district $26,000 a year an outrageous amount, and reasoned that the district should have owned the land at least over the years for its payments. You're paying PG&E $50,000 a month, and you aren't even getting stock in the company. A few $1,000s waving at the district in the form of rebates should not distract you from longer-term improvements that will ultimately relieve the district of those hefty monthly payments. Instead of signing up for more, get started converting the district to solar power. Solar panel technology is constantly improving. Solar power incentives have been reduced, thanks largely to lobbying by PG&E and other utilities. That's what your participation in this program will support. Not clean energy or fewer greenhouse gas emissions, but PG&E working against climate crisis progress. I applaud Mr. Green and Mr. Reaper for championing electric vehicles. I expect that they have benefited from the experience of installing the EV charging station, and the next one will go more smoothly. PG&E's negative public presence and corporate malfeasance are well documented. Take the time before the June 13th meeting to study this program and how it will affect the district's finances and climate change commitment, and don't get involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment, written or
Yes.
online?
Linda Prentice, when please may I build on my 5 vacant subdivision lots on Norwich? And that's all that I have.
Thank you. So we'll move on to manager reports. General Manager, Facilities and Resources, Finance and Utilities in that order. Let's start with the General Manager's report, Mr. McElhenney.
Thank you, President Gray. So we have the Meet the GM, I believe is the fire chief going to be there as well on the 29th from 8:30 in the morning to 7. I believe the chief is here roughly from 9 to 12. So again, we're always here for you to come by and talk about anything and everything Cambria. I recently attended the Special District Leadership Academy, where I was able to meet with other GMs and other boards, and so that was pretty enlightening and a good experience. Our administration office will be closed for Memorial Day on Monday, May 27th. Moving on to some of our projects, the Cambria Skate Park permitting process is complete, the minor use permitting process, and now we're in the building review process. We're still working on wrapping up the final grant requirements for our skate park grant, and that should be hopefully done within the next 6 to 7 weeks. The East Ranch restroom permit has been issued. We have purchased the restroom with on April 1st. Our EV charging station relocation is complete and active. We had vehicles charging as early as last Friday, so that's a big win for the district. We are still waiting for a few things, getting signage up, EV parking only, things of that nature. We want to welcome Kyle Herrera, which was sworn in last week, to the fire department as our newly hired safer EMT. So we want to welcome him aboard. As stated by the chief, we had a very well-prepared wildfire preparedness event this last Saturday. The recording is up and on the fire department website underneath the Fire Safe Focus Group link. So that is there for you to watch, and I encourage our homeowners to watch that. We want to make sure that they understand defensible space, and former Chief Bob Putney gave a great demonstration on how to harden our structures in terms of defensible space, and that's a really good watch and very, very informative. Our fire hazard fuel reduction program is underway. The contract has been awarded to Paradise Tree Service, and we will be sending out weekly reminders about our weed abatement deadlines. I do want to caution the public that it is still early in the season. We are to maintain our defensible spaces. The lot owners are responsible for making sure that the weeds are cut year round. Just be careful about the cutting early and not revisiting the lots, because we will see regrowth as we approach the July 15th. So I don't want our public to be confused about the potential to cut once in April or early May and think that we won't have an issue come July. So just keep that in mind. I spoke with Mr. Blake Fixler, Supervisor Gibson's office, this last week, shortly before we did the resolution for Rodeo Grounds Road. We had a very good conversation, and after that conversation, he immediately put in a work order for Rodeo Grounds Road, and which was good. They listened to us. I'm going to share my screen real quick. That work was completed in terms of grading Rodeo Grounds Road, and I will share my desktop here. So it's been graded. The conversation that I had with Mr. Fixler, according to county standards, the county will maintain these county roads as they were originally built, or to the original standard, which is this dirt half gravel road. That is the standard to which they'll maintain it. There is some discussion with Mr. Gibson's office about working with us if we wanted to pave it, but it is their belief that that would be a cost to the CCSD, but there's some low interest rate financing that can come from the county that could assist us in paving it. Obviously, that's a discussion to be had, but we did get the road back to reasonable condition, and we'll still keep with those conversations with the county. I wanted to remind the public about the contractors that are listed for the weed abatement. There are no extensions on the weed abatement deadline. There's a lot of confusion out there as to contractors mentioning an extension once the lot is under contract, as if they can go beyond the July 15th. I just want to make sure that they know that there's no extensions, and that no one in the district is authorized to issue those extensions, let alone any of the contractors. So the July 15th deadline is the hard deadline, and please don't listen to anyone that might tell you that there's an extension to be had, because there isn't. And with that, we'll end my report. I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Mr. McElhenney. Any questions from the directors? Director Dean.
Okay, on the Rodeo Grounds Road, I did talk to Supervisor Gibson at the Wildfire Safe Focus Town Hall meeting. And he did tell me about a 10-year plan. It's like a CSA, where they could pave the road and we could make payments on it over 10 years at a small interest. But I'm with our budget, I don't think we can afford that, but I'm very pleased to see that they responded so quickly and graded it. But what do you think our chances are of getting some road base or gravel or something like that on it so it doesn't become a big dust storm with cars going back and forth on it during the summer?
Thank you, Director. And yeah, I did speak to him about that on what class it was going to be held to. He's connected me with Public Works, and we're going to meet with Mr. Aguirre out at the Rotary Grounds Road to take a look at a culvert that has also been causing some of the drainage issues. And so we're going to talk about the culvert, and then we're going to talk about the road base and see what some of our options are. We didn't get that far into discussion to what standard that road was going to be maintained outside of our thinking about paving it.
Okay, thank you. Director Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, President Gray. And you get me thinking, let's have a cost estimate for what it would cost to upgrade that to a paved road. And dividing that by 10, let's at least see it.
Thank you. Any more questions? Just to add, I guess, to Director Thomas's point, maybe two cost estimates, one for a gravel base, a number 2 base road, and a paved road, to see what the difference would be. Yeah.
Yes, President Gray. I'll meet with our utilities manager, Mr. Green, and I'm sure he has a lot of experience with these roads, and I'm sure we can get some
Good,
quotes.
thank you, thank you. Is there any public comment from people present here or online?
No.
No, thank you. Well, thank you, Mr. McElhenney, and I guess we'll move on to the next general manager's report, which I believe is, facilities and resources.
And I will be taking that one over
Okay.
as well, President Gray.
Yeah,
Mr.
thank you.
Aguirre is out today, but I'll make it brief. I don't have a pretty slideshow like Mr. Aguirre, but I'll do my best.
Okay.
So for CSD weed abatement for our lots, out of the 197 lots, we are at about 48 completed, and that progress is continuing. Again, we're having the same issues as any of our other lot owners or residences that we debate. There's going to be some regrowth, so it's kind of a repetitive process, but we're working on that. We have started spraying invasive species on the ranch. It is using milestone and blue dye, which has been used in the past, and it's anticipated to take up to 1 week. Beginning May 20th, we're going to be working on the fire breaks adjacent to the West Ranch. That's a very important fire prevention tool. And then we do have some trail maintenance chips being placed on the trails to enhance some of the trail work. And as far as community engagement goes, we're working with the Peach Builders Committee of the Cambria Rotary Club to enhance the Peace Garden out front, which was previously approved by the board. They're mapping out some of the utility lines, and once those are marked, they're going to be working with the fence installation project. And that completes the report.
Thank you. Any questions from the board members? Dr. Thomas.
Thank you, President Gray, and not a question, but just compliments. With my FFRP volunteer hat on, is got to share how grateful the volunteers were Wednesday when we got out on the ranch. Literally Sunday when I was walking, sighting out where to work, the South Hill, most of the hills, the area was just inundated with the south thistles, the milk thistles, and the Italian thistles. We got out there Wednesday morning ready to do battle, and we go out there and we can see the telltale blue dye very carefully on each of the plants. I don't know, the skill level of Gregorio's crew at West Coast is really amazing. No overspray on any of the other plants, and those thistles, their heads are just drooping. You could see it from, and this is just 2 days later. So just kudos, amazing work, and talk about Save Our Ranch. And I have read the MSDS on the milestone, and it is certified for reserves, and it's very selective. So thanks again, and pass that on. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the directors? Any public comment on the, oops, Director Farmer?
Thank you, President Gray, no problem. I just want some clarification, just so I have my facts straight. General Manager McElhaney, you mentioned 48 out of 147 lots,
Director Farmer, 197.
197. So just to clarify what that is, what that relates to?
To the CCSD lots, owned lots.
Okay, thank you.
Again, I think any public comment on this report?
No.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Finance Manager's report. Ms. Fritz?
Thank you, President Gray. So in your packets, you see the finance manager's report for the month of April. And so in this packet is also the expenditure report under 6A for the month of April, the director's compensation, as well as our cash balances, and our unrestricted balance is around 10.1 million at the end April 30th. And one item that did not make it in this report that I wanted to mention is that we've been working really hard on a new customer portal that is going to be going live at the beginning of June. And we're really excited about this. And I will be at the next board meeting in June, probably with a presentation on how to log in and sign up. And so within this portal, you'll be able to see your usage, your billing history, your prior utility bills, your current utility bills, and then also included in this is a new electronic payment option. So we'll be doing away with our current one, and which is not the easiest to use. And so this is really easy to use. And it is in this customer portal, so you can do electronic payments that way. And we'll also be able to take electronic payments at the district office. So people can walk in and we all have a credit card scanner there and stuff. So that's very exciting for us. And we've been working hard on that. And then, couple that with the meter project that's coming out. We'll have some real up-to-date, good information for all of the community to see about their utility bills. So look for that in the coming weeks. And Haley's going to have all the information on the website and all of that good stuff.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions from the board members? Yeah, Dr. Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, President Gray, and thank you, Ms. Fritz. In the finance manager's report, I compare the PG&E SSD expenditures month to month, $569,000 over the month of April, and then I'm looking at the expenditure report, and there's 254,000. And how I'm sure there's a reason for the discrepancy in timing, but I'm curious why.
Okay, so I looked into that for you, Director Thomas. And so the PG&E update that was in the finance manager's report that was presented last month in April was not, I don't know if it was timing or I just missed it or whatever the reason, but it was not reflecting the most recent payment that had happened in April. So the difference of 567,322 is from an April payment of 253,673, and the one that you're seeing in the expenditure report, and a March payment of 313,649. So the difference is the 567,322. So this current presentation and the finance manager's report for this month is reflective of all of the activity for the SST project today. Yes. Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, I had just a quick question on the customer portal and what you can see about your usage. It sounds like to me like once the meters are replaced with the new transmission, data reading system, you'll be able to get real-time data on your usage, right? Right now you can't get real-time usage, but you will be. Is that right?
That's true. It'll be 15-minute increments. So it'll be basically live, but just set back by about 15 minutes.
Yeah. Thank you. That's when the water meter, another topic today, when that project is completed, they'll be able to do that, which will be quite soon, actually. Thank you. Any public comment on this report?
No.
Thank you. So move on to utilities. Mr. Green.
Great. Thank you, President Gray. The utility report for April will begin with the wastewater report. So the community received about 2 inches of rain during the month of April. That was a little later in the season impact for us. So there were still 3 days that we received over in excess of 1 million gallons per day at the wastewater plant. So that took a hydraulic load as far as our treatment processing. It pushed some of the solids again into our finishing ponds. So we had to then remove that and send that back to the headworks for treatment. So the staff worked hard on the plant for the first several weeks to kind of get the plant back to running back to normal status quo, and we are right now. You can see in the second picture there illustrated is we're performing analytical device and flow measurement calibration. These are critical to us. We do this annually. We are not required to do this, but all those measurements and all those flow data, those are reported directly to our regulatory agency, so we want that to be as accurate as possible. We also use that as our processing treatment kind of analysis for when to use more chemical, when to slow down flow. So that took place. We also had a semi kind of huge update to our APCD with the County of SLO. All of our towable generators, which we have 9 lift stations, so we have several sites that we use towable generators out for backup power in emergency events and storm events. And those are all now being permitted as a permanently installed unit. So the regulatory compliance and all that is the same. It's just a new level of permitting for us, I guess. It's just basically it's a bigger check to write annually for those, and the compliance and regulatory is the same. But we had to go back in and identify each unit and device and give the specifications and update the county with all that. So it was quite an undertaking for Superintendent Artho. Also, Superintendent Artho and I just recently this week spend several days, about 2 to 3 hours a day. We have the final plans for the SST. So this is our chance to kind of nitpick where a valve is maybe 7 feet high, and we'd like to have that reduced to a more appropriate height for operation and some other fine things, fine-tuning items like that. And we will be going over that, Superintendent Artho and myself, with our SST program managers for their side, that's Southland and MKN Engineering, and that'll be next week. We'll also be breaking ground on the SST project June 5th. We'll have our construction trailer in there. And just as everything kind of settles down from winter and we get the plant running, up to spec, we're going to start tearing up the grounds and do our ECM, so our energy conservation modules, and begin that work. So we look forward to doing that. Collection system also received 11 new manhole covers the last week of April. I think they got in and got out in less than a week and hit those 11 sites. Those are 11 critical sites, which are kind of in the alluviums of the downhill flow that collect a lot of stormwater. So those are sealed manhole covers where the 1-inch pick hole is now sealed. They're sealed around the perimeter of it. So we won't get as much I&I at those locations. And for every manhole lid that has that pick hole is about 5 gallons a minute. So you can imagine on those long storm precipitation durations, that's a lot of I&I for our plant. So anything that we can eliminate coming into the plant for processing, I think is beneficial. And over the month, the wastewater collections team also performed jetting and cleaning over a quarter mile. Some of that was on Moonstone Beach, which is a heavy populated area that needs traffic control, and usually a lot of onlookers and so forth. So it's a little bit more of a difficult task. So we choose to do that at this time every year, post-season, and kind of pre-tourist season there, where it's just almost impossible to do work on Moonstone almost any day. So that took place for wastewater. The water department also spent time on a busy street and had traffic control. We had a small leak, less than a couple gallons a minute, but it was a service line going to the thrift store there on Main, which is a very populated place for traffic and pedestrian traffic. So we had traffic control out there shutting down the lane, and water staff replaced the service line there. So we shouldn't expect any more failures from that line. We had, in the illustration we'll also show there on the utilities report, you see our contractor out there measuring and performing a site evaluation for our San Simeon Well 3 replacement. We have just finally completed the bonding with them. It seems like bonding with some of these contractors is an issue, so we've just finished bonding. So we look forward now finally for that to take place in the month of June. Also illustrated there is our SR4 preparation. We had the 2 backwash tanks, which since they have been installed have never been cleaned or inspected. So we took this opportunity prior to the season to clean and inspect the tanks, and they're all in very good condition. And we look forward to firing up Santa Rosa Well 4 around Memorial Weekend, and we'll then leave it online and operational until the end of season, which for us is October 31st. Also illustrated on there was a hydrant in Castle Street, which was with the new development there on that corner. The hydrant was too low, it was inoperable. So if we had a fire emergency, you couldn't get a manual key around to operate it. So we put what they call a cast iron spool, and we brought that up to where it's an operable height. So if there was an emergency down there, that hand valves or hand wrenches could be used to operate that. Also, you can see it's grounds maintenance for utilities as well. We did a lot of mowing and weed whacking around our assets, and defensible space was trimmed and mowed. I'm sure we'll be back out there again later in season, but that took place. We'll move down to WRF information. We had Professional Water Technologies was out for several days. They trained one of our newer operators, which will be one of our key operators for the pilot program coming up. And they did some other housekeeping and maintenance. The Interlogix is a software that runs that needed an update. And we also got trained on how to pin and repair our ultrafiltration membranes. It's a really simple process on paper, but is actually quite task heavy due to the container and the 6-foot tube that you have to bring out and set down. And so some of those things were prepared and brought up to speed. And it's preventive maintenance, and it's also kind of preparedness for our pilot run, which is going to take place in late October or November. I met yesterday with Global Water Innovations and the owner of Trevi Water Systems, who was out, and we picked a specific footprint where we're going to set that down. We looked at plumbing options for brine to the device and then electrical to the device. We also designated as a specific meter, so that way we can validate consumption use by this plant and by this device. So we can kind of use that in the vetting of this process and understand what kind of energy it's going to take for the use of this. That's pretty much all I have for the report, and that sums it up.
Yeah.
You guys have any questions?
Thank you very much, Mr. Green. Yes, any questions from board members? I'll start with Vice President Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. And this may just be my ignorance, but on page 17, under WWTP maintenance and repairs, there's a paragraph that is mostly in capitals. Can you tell me what that means?
So that is our new request for order. That's our new permit. Regional Water saying that it's going to update our permit for years. They have. Superintendent Artho, Program Manager Reaper, and myself spent several hours that month preparing this. This is all of our specifications, all of our data, all of our as-built, aerial footage, process flow. We basically pulled everything out and unearthed our archives out for the last 30, 40 years and had to re-present that to them with new process flow and some of the updates to the SST incorporated in that, and we submitted to that. They haven't returned any questions or concerns with that, but as of right now, it's still in the submission stage and not the approval stage. So we're kind of leaving that as a marker for me internally. So that way, when we get that approval, we can bring that back as a success story.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Director Dean?
I have several things.
Okay.
I am thrilled to hear that we're about ready to break ground on those SST projects.
I am too. We have a lot of materials and spent a lot of time designing this. So it's nice to see the rubber hit the road finally.
You said the construction trailer will soon be on site. Who will be overseeing the construction of these projects?
It'll be Southland.
Southland?
Yeah.
Okay. And so someone from Southland will be stationed in that.
Yeah, Doug McKinney from Southland will be on site.
Okay, on your collection systems, I think this was a wastewater collection system project, I'm not sure. There was quite a bit of activity on Spencer Street in the last few weeks with the road dug up and all of that. What was going on there?
That would have been a manhole replacement there.
Okay,
Yeah, that was just it was just a little bit more to that task.
okay, there's a trench going up the side of the bank alongside the road that's all taped out with a pipe sticking up. What is that about?
That was a lateral that was capped off over a year ago by us. We thought that was an unused lateral anymore. It is not an unused lateral. It is active, and so that had to be uncapped and rehooked up to that house.
Okay. Good job cleaning up that tank at SR4. What a big difference.
We'll now proceed with like semi-annual maintenance on that prior to season, so yeah.
Okay, I had my hand in another spot, but I can't remember what the question was going to be, so I'll let someone
Okay.
else speak.
Director Farmer?
Thank you, President Gray. Well, Director Dean kind of addressed a couple of items I wanted to bring up. So first off, with regard to the SR4 tank, and it's like night and day, no pun intended, but that's kind of how it looks. So how was this tank cleaned, and how long did it take?
Water staff took our vac trailer in and cleaned out what we could. We don't have confined space permits for water staff, so we got in there with our 6-foot long vac tube and got as much as we could. We subcontracted that out for assistance with the cleaning, and then also the final end of it to perform the inspection, and we'll have that inspection report in a couple of weeks.
Okay, and also with regard to the projects at the wastewater plant, the energy conservation measures, and I believe you said it's going to start on June 5th, and I can't think of anything that I've, except for the possible exception of more progress. No, I won't go there. Let's just say I can't think of anything more in all the years that I've been on the board than improvements at the wastewater plant. I mean, it's like so, it's been so needed for so long. So starting on June 5th, so some clarification, obviously not, they're not all going to start at that time. And I know you've already said this, so if you could just restate, give us some kind of ballpark figure as to moving forward with all these projects and when we, the board, the district, and the community might anticipate these projects finally being completed.
Completion is slated for all 12 ECMs for probably a year plus.
Okay.
So we might be here in 2 years finally saying, yay, we're done. But yeah, it's at least a year to 2 years, depending on some of the difficulty. If everything goes as planned and, you know, like they say, it looks good on paper, but like we know, until we get underground and start dealing with the unknowns, it could take up to 2 years, yes.
And if I could ask one more thing, and this just popped into my head, because people are, I'm going to say constantly, but questioning the expense of everything that we do, but especially the monies that is being spent on improving the wastewater plant. And obviously it's been around a few years. So these improvements, as opposed to building a new wastewater plant, these improvements, what kind of, therefore, opportunity will we have to continue to operate this, the wastewater plant, operating obviously in a much more healthy and efficient manner than in the past? How long can we anticipate this being a totally reliable wastewater plant for the foreseeable future once the work is done.
Well, what's nice about the ECMs, they're not only energy conserving, they're treatment and processing conserving. So we're using this advantage to bring it up to today's kind of processing. It was built years ago for the type of processing they did. We all know regulatory compliance increases every year, and the nitrates and TDS that we discharge, those MCLs, those maximum contaminant limits, are being reduced every year. So this will meet that going forward for the next probably at least 10 projected years. There's small little tweaks we can do if there's any compliance issues that we have, but this is probably a good 30, 40-year upgrade at least. All these new components that we're putting in are replacing components that have been there for 30 or 40 years, but the actual processing of this will be much better for the plant, much easier for the operators, and much better for our regulatory compliance. And we're building it in the kind of standards that we are. Here we are today, we get these 100-year storms every other year, it seems like. So now we'll have that ability to take those 1 million gallons a day to kind of house it and process it slowly, so we don't have these hydraulic overload processes on every huge rain event. So it's really energy conserving with regulatory compliance kind of combination there.
Well, thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Director Farmer.
Dr. Thomas.
Well, thank you, President Gray. A few questions. And yeah, the picture of on page 27 of the backwash tank, I would expect more than a few people to look at that and say, "Oh, yuck! We were drinking water from that." And can you explain that in fact drinking water was never in that tank?
Drinking water was never in that tank. That drains slowly and hydraulically to our wastewater plant. That goes directly to our wastewater plant. And so that's backwash. So that's backwash off their filter media there. So it goes through a pressure vessel, which is about, I think it's about 4 cubic yards. And about half of that is full with proprietary media, which is sand, garnet, that type of filtration that gets out specifically iron and manganese, because that's an iron and manganese specific treatment plant. And so that concentrations you see of that black gunk, that's concentrate iron and manganese that slowly makes its way back to the plant. So that's a accumulation of probably 10 years right there. So we do plan to clean it out more often and take care of that steel tank. And but yeah, that does not go into our drinking water. That comes out of that natural source raw water that we're removing right there. And we now, as per the division drinking water, we test for iron and manganese effluent. So that's our finished product water. So we start off with iron and manganese levels like in the 10 to 20 parts per million, which isn't super high, but it's high enough that you obviously need to treat it. And we have a non-detect for those every month, and we've been testing it now for the last 3 months. We've tested in the prior. They tested the plant, obviously, when they put it in, but now we test that monthly to validate those results, and it's been a non-detect for the last 3 months. So, and we'll continue to, verify and confirm that removal of those specifically.
And I gather your detection sensitivity is like 1 ppm, right?
For iron and manganese.
So you say it non-detect.
Non-detect, yeah, that means there was no detection of any of those chemicals,
Right.
effluent. So
Yeah,
finished
and,
product.
and the sensitivity of that test is probably.
Like a plus or minus, like a tolerance level?
Maybe I'm not asking the question right, but you find that there's 10 to 20 ppm, in the water coming up from the well, and the instrumentation sensitivity. You can measure plus or minus 1 degree, right? So non-detect never means zero. There's never zero. So non-detect means below.
So I think their range of tolerance is a plus or minus 1%.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like 1 ppm.
If that, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Also, just I wanted to first compliment on you continue to raise the bar. The reports are so clear, and especially the project summary table. And I just wanted to go on record. We'll never have sufficient information to please everyone, but for me, this strikes the right balance between detail and clarity. I like what we're getting here. And oh my goodness, the pictures on the pinning, I would never have understood that from an oral explanation, you know, as a mechanical engineer. So, and the other thing I wanted to bring in, this gives us a feel for how complex that instrumentation is, and it might even be something that would cause some appreciation for the advanced water treatment plant and the sophistication of that equipment. So that's, you know, that was a great bit
Absolutely.
of
Thank you.
information.
If you guys would ever like me to cover anything further in there, I'd be more than happy to. I do try and keep our kind of response or updates, you know, somewhat curt. You know, I don't want to get too far down in the weeds. Obviously, love to talk and report on stuff, but I do try and keep that timely and curt. I don't want people to fall asleep while they're reading.
And one question on the, back on page 18, the SST program updates. With the exception of the very first bullet, under ECM 1, these are all identical to the prior month. So is that reflective of?
We're just trying to paint with a semi-broad brush, but give some specificity to what those projects entail and what's going on when we finally dig into that and what, you know, the finished product will be.
Okay, milestones complete?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
As we go through these and start, we'll detail out, you know, we had we had issues with this on replacement. We did this to circumvent, or we'll provide updates on those individually as we, you know, touch on those milestones. Very good.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Thomas. Yeah, I had a quick question on page 28, the pictures in the narrative on the fire hydrant lifting. I noticed and I'm familiar with that location because there was a house being built and a retaining wall put in, and this was something that wasn't a natural occurrence, and I was wondering, is there a responsibility for fixing, or for, let's say this, is there a determination of what caused it and who's responsible for it, and would they pay, or how does that work?
In this case, it was the owner's responsibility, so the onus is on him, so he was charged materials and labor.
Yeah, that was good to know. Thank you. Yeah. It sounds like a very, I don't know, how many more of these? This doesn't happen very often, does it, fortunately?
Yeah, new houses being built and, you know, areas and surfaces around height being raised doesn't happen very often. But we do have some hydrants that are off or closer to hills and slide. And so the slide, we all know there's erosion, and as those erosion events happen, we do lift and raise those, and obviously that's, you know, that's taken care of internally.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Is there any public comment on this report?
No.
Okay, thank you. Wait, Mr. Howell, please come forward.
Okay. Oh, just a quick question on the backwash tanks. Trying to understand the photos. Oh, and thank you, Director Thomas, for raising the issue about that's not our drinking water. But what is the scale? How big are those tanks?
Those are 6,750 gallon tanks. So those two tanks are just about a little over 13,500 gallons.
In terms of feet, though, like how high? If I were, could I stand in them? Or?
No, their radius is 12 foot and they're 10 foot high.
Good. Thank you. I was just trying to visualize.
They're large tanks.
Yeah. But not like Stewart Street tanks.
No. Stewart Street tanks cumulative are about 337,000 gallons. So yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Dujic.
Sorry I showed up late. I've been listening in on my phone the whole time, but I just have to say on behalf of the public, great job. I mean, amazing, really good work. I'm so thrilled that we have such a great staff that is getting down to the details, planning their work, getting their work done, presenting it in a way that we can all understand. It's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comment?
No.
No, thank you. Mr. Green, you had a light on. I was wondering if you wanted to say anything else. No.
No, I'm good. Thank you. Appreciate
Thank you very much. Okay. We can move along, I think, to the consent agenda at this point, I believe, yes. The 4 items on this consent agenda are to be approved with one motion. If the directors wish to discuss a consent item, not just have a question about it, but discuss other than simple clarifying questions, request for removal may be made, and otherwise we will vote on all 4 at once. Anybody want to poll one of these items for consideration? Director Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, President Gray. And you tell me, I've got more than half a dozen questions, and one of the line items I believe is charged incorrectly to the wrong department. So
I'll take Vice President Scott first, then I'll get back to that because I want to consider that.
Yes, I'd like to pull 6D, please.
6D? Okay, that's financing for water meters. Were most of your questions, Director Thomas, about 6D?
no, all on the, well, I also have questions on 6D.
6D will be polled.
But,
yeah.
but no, the questions were on the expenditure report.
I think for just questions on the expenditure report, I think we'll just take those as questions now and fold it into the consent agenda. So go ahead with your questions if you have.
Makes sense. So on page 55, charges of $6,800 for planning and engineering services for the emergency access study were allocated to pros. It seems to me this was for fire prevention and should be charged to the fire department. Pardon me? So again,
Yeah,
page 55.
55.
Civil Design Studios. So it is 2 inches down.
Okay, great, thanks.
4th or 5th item. So would my assumption be correct?
Director Thomas,
yeah, please.
that was coded by staff using the idea that it is open space. And so typically staff is the one that deals and assigns those in the expenditure report as a part of the staff purview. I can continue to talk.
It's not our open space. And
I think this is
the purpose of this was for fire prevention, obviously.
yeah. I don't know how can we make the change? Is it possible to make the change in the adopted report? We might, if this is something that has to be changed to the extent, we might have to poll this, but ask the other questions first.
And, the other questions are purely informational.
Okay.
Curious about the $5,000 to drive customs for the mounting system for the fire chief's Tahoe. And after, right, when we bought the vehicle months ago for the former fire chief, I thought it had already been outfitted. So I'm just kind of curious what changed there.
I would have to talk to the fire chief again. However, it is my understanding that the previous fire chief had committed to and parts were purchased for that vehicle, some of which we couldn't go backwards. And so that was an invoice on a committed to cost that our current fire chief probably wouldn't have agreed with some of the things that were done to that vehicle. There's a lot of things on that vehicle that were made by a previous fire chief.
Yeah, fair enough, clear enough. So jumping to page 60, the monthly charge to Luttrell staffing. You'll ask me where that is.
Luttrell staffing at the top.
Yeah, there it is at the top. For Rochelle and Benjamin and Scott Stack, I'm guessing this is, since it's less than it was the month prior, that's probably the last we're going to see now that we've hired these fine folks, right?
You'll see one more invoice in May, and then that's the final one.
Yay!
Okay.
Yay!
Okay.
Yes, good work. So on page 61, just trying to understand the 20. This is not a big charge. Near the top, the 2347 to NBS for, it's for the 22 certificates of participation, and the description, right? Can you say that in words of the English language for me?
Yeah, it is standing for Continuing Disclosure Report Preparation and Dissemination Review.
Makes perfect sense. I remember hearing that, but I couldn't remember the. All right. And yeah, tell us about, so page 61, also professional water technologies. And I think the first I've seen from them, and for RO cleaner training, a substantial training expense. So love to hear a little more about that. And I'm guessing that's not related to, in your utilities report, we heard about H2O innovations coming out to do training. These are separate, right?
No, PWT is H2O innovation.
Ah, okay, there you go.
So if we refer to one or the other, I'm sorry, we don't always keep that the same, but yeah, PWT is the parent company of H2O Innovations. H2O Innovations is the staff that came out and did training, the Interlogix integration for software, the pinning, as you noted, and numerous other things. We had some chemical pumps that had, basically they're failed. They're no longer able to work with our system. We replaced those. We got those up and running, made sure they were pumping liquid correctly, and then we integrated that into the Interlogix system. Because this is all one big system. You can see how fast you're pumping, what you're dosing. I mean, it's obviously a very advanced treatment plant. So all these new components that we're replacing that have failed have to be integrated into this operational system.
Awesome. Yeah, that's clear. Thank you. And on page 64, on the renewal for the wastewater treatment plant, we have SLO County APCD, and then looking back over the year, we have a different vendor number, the San Luis Obispo County Air Pollution Control District, and so we have, I guess for different purposes, it looks like we have the same entity in the system as two different vendors. And is that by intent, or is that just somebody coded it differently, and should we combine them?
I went and looked, and actually 11859, vendor 11859 is no longer active in the system. So it looks like just two vendors were created for the same vendor. Yeah, that is not the most efficient way. We are currently in a project where we're doing vendor review and cleaning up the vendors. We do have some duplicates in there, and it's just from the transition to Tyler and just staff turnover and stuff. I think vendors, duplicate vendors have been created. So I do know that 11859 is no longer active or in the system.
And Director Thomas, just for future reference, like you'll see SLO Health, there's two different coding lines for that. Just for them specifically, I don't know if this is the same case of interest for this, but you'll have a correspondence fee, and then you'll have an actual permitting fee or location. And sometimes in area the two meet, and sometimes they do. And this, I'm not sure if this was this case, but specifically for like SLO County Health, they'll have a correspondence fee, and then our annual fee will go to a different coding.
And PG&E is another one. We have one vendor for our monthly utility billing, and then we have a different vendor for the SST project. They're both Pacific Gas and Electric.
Right, of course. And that's like, thank goodness you have those separated. Yeah, so thanks for that. And then, last and maybe least on oh gosh, I wrote 735. It's upstream H2O. So I obviously have a typo. So where's the reference upstream H2O?
It's on page 65.
Right. Yes, page 65.
The top, third down.
So what is the expenditure for VMMS project? Like the words, what does that mean?
The upstream feature, so essentially they take a digital feature or a digital picture illustrating like a lift station. Within that lift station, you can digitize that onto like a website or a portal where you can drag your mouse over it, over a device, say like submersible pump. You drag that over, you can open up that file. It'll give you preventive maintenance, part numbers for everything, and it'll kind of give you an exploded version of detail, more specifically for preventive maintenance and to identify what are in those locations. So these are images that are captured along with associating that appurtenances there with specifications and preventive maintenance and those sort of things. Does that make sense?
So it's for each, it's within the fence of the wastewater treatment plant for
These were specifically, yeah, I'm just using that as an example.
Gotcha. And it's basically a photo of each component.
Right, that you can utilize on a, like I said, a portal or a website that you log into, that you can then go to, again, like lift station A, you'll go there and say, oh, it's a submersible 50 horsepower. It was a Briggs and Stratton from 1976. These are the parts to replace this. This is our suggested by the vendor or manufacturer, the suggested replacements or preventive maintenance dates. And it gives you a lot more detail rather than looking through these volumes of manuals and trying to find that. You can go to a specific site, click on it, open it, find the part, and then
Got it. So the
do your
MMS
detail. It's kind of a quicker way to do research on items for repair or for background or for information.
Got
We
it.
also
So
keep
the
some
MMS
standard operating procedures for those locations in that as well.
Great. So the MMS stands for Maintenance Management System.
Yep.
And the V stands for virtual?
Correct.
Okay, got it. Okay,
Can I
thank you.
add a little bit? Is it okay to add a little bit to your question?
Yeah, but briefly, because I want to,
Yeah, so the
cover these.
$12,000, is that an annual fee? Is that a one-time fee or?
That was a project fee specifically for this, and you won't see any more fees from these guys. Unfortunately, we've got all their data and all of our schematics back from them, and they went out of business. So unfortunately, we won't be doing any more sites. So yeah, we did collect all of our data and anything necessary, to fulfill their payments. But
Great. Director Farmer.
Yes, thank you, President Dean. I also have one item that I'd like to get some clarification on in the expenditure report on page 62, 4 items down, RD Offutt Company, inspection and repair on the tractor for facilities and resources, a little over $15,000. So I'm just curious, that sounds like a lot of money to do some repair on a tractor. Have we considered, first off, what is the value of the tractor? If we had to go out and buy a new one, how much would that cost? And one would assume all these repairs that have been done on this tractor, therefore we won't need to have any done for quite a while. But it just seemed like an expense of some magnitude. Does that make any sense, what I just said?
Absolutely, Director Farmer. That tractor is our largest tractor, and the driveline broke, gearbox overheated, significant damage, and so that is our main tractor for especially the fire breaks and a lot of the larger weed abatement issues in the district. I don't know the exact number for what a new tractor would be significant, and so this was $125,000, and so.
All right. All right, I certainly appreciate that clarification, and also just to know that some major item failed, which can happen to any of us in a vehicle. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Director Farmer. Yeah, I want to circle back on the questions. Well, Director Dean first.
Okay, I don't know if this is something you can answer or not, and I don't really see much about it in the expense report, but a lot of members of the public have been asking me what we have spent so far on the SR4 litigation.
Thank you, Dr. Dean. Yeah, obviously those payments for the litigation for SR4 are wrapped in over several expenditure reports, but I do have a total here to date, which there will be more costs associated with it. For Rattan and Tucker, we are at $25,517.50. And then for Mr. Carmel, the fees above his retainer, currently we are at $14,200 for a total of $39,717.50.
Could you repeat that last number?
$39,717.50.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Circling back to Director Thomas's questions, I see one of them, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think your questions were answered, except for the one about the civil design studio payment and how to classify it. And I think in light of that, I'll pull this item, pull the expense report out of the consent agenda for separate discussion if we want to discuss whether we want to change that, reclassify that item. So I think first we'll go to the other parts, the other two items on the consent agenda and clear them first. These are the.
President Gray, would you like me to answer that or address that quickly?
Oh, okay, if you could, yes.
We can code it to fire. Ultimately, the previous fire chief budgeted to zero.
Okay.
So no matter what we assign to fire, it'll be.
So if you can do it without any discussion,
Both departments
I'll keep it in
would be going in a deficit with that being assigned to them. So deficit in F&R or fire, we'll assign it to fire and it'll be easy.
Yeah, so it remains in the consent agenda.
It just seems the right thing to do.
Yeah, right. Good. Thanks for saving us the extra work. I will entertain a motion on the consent agenda, which in this case is 3 items. Items 6A, 6B, and 6C.
I move that we adopt consent agenda items 6A, 6B, and 6C with the amendment as expressed on 6A.
6A regarding the civil design studios payment. Exactly. Good.
Design studios.
Reclassified to assigned to fire.
What he said.
Yeah. Assigned to fire. Oh, do we have a second?
I'll second, yes.
It's moved and seconded that we adopt consent agenda items 6B, 6C, and 6D with a, 6A, 6B, and 6C with the payment for civil design studios for the emergency evacuation route reassigned to fire. Could I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Director Dean?
Aye.
Director Farmer?
Aye.
Director Thomas?
Aye.
Vice President Scott?
Aye.
President Gray?
Aye. Now on item 6D, I'll start with having staff present it and go from there.
Thank you, President Gray. Agenda item 6D, consideration of adoption of a resolution 13-2024 approving financing for water meters. This topic previously became before the board for approval of a financing agreement. In the period in which we were getting ready to finish this financing agreement, the rates had changed. There were some discussions with President Gray and Chairperson Gray of the Finance Committee about that change. It went up from our previous percentage amount. We were subsequently then able to lock in the current rate, and we are now bringing it back before the board for a resolution to move forward with the financing of the water meters. And I'll turn over to Ms. Fritz if she has anything further to add.
Yeah, so last time we brought it before you was to decide if we were going to finance or use our reserves. And so, as general manager explained, when I went back to solidify the financing, the rate went up a little bit. We were able to keep it under 5% at the 4.95 over 5 years. So I have some of the information that was included last month in there about our investment rates and such. And so at this point, I have locked in the 4.95%. And that would, I've included the new payment schedule, and that would be worked into the new year 24-25 budget for the water department.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of staff from the directors? Vice President Scott.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. So remind me. So we're going to get all of the meters and they're going to be replaced at one time.
All of the registers will be replaced at one time, and then I'll let the utility manager explain the other phase of the project.
Second phase will be replacing the brass bodies. Based on the endpoints that we install, we'll be able to get a lot more knowledge of areas of concern or meters that aren't reading properly. And that will be our kind of impetus to start there with those locations and replace those first. So the first wave is to get the data, to start recording our data for residential and commercial consumption. And then we can go on and then attack the brass body phase.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Dr. Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, President Gray. I just wanted to comment, you know, and it's really kudos to our administrative department manager. You know, for April 18th, we saw this, you know, and the estimated rate was 4.75, and no surprise, we're a month later, and now it's 4.95. Let's lock this in. And again, we owe Denny's kudos for bringing this to us. We're yielding over 5% on the reserves, so this is a net. So we need to, rather than complain that we're paying interest, we should be thankful for the reserves, you know, the increased reserves we're going to get through careful planning, and also kind of a lesson learned to us. How can we move quickly to enable the savvy instincts of our finance manager, you know, of Denise in that role? When she sees the right thing to do, how can we move more quickly than this example? I mean, and this isn't bad for a governmental entity to take a couple of months.
No.
But, you know, you know that you and I as homeowners and financial managers of our own portfolios, we wouldn't take 2 months. And so just wanted to bring that up, and I don't know, maybe for reflection.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I would add to that. I think we were actually required to come back with this resolution after the first vote. Ms. Fritz, is that correct?
Yeah, so we have to have the resolution, and I have learned through this process, as this is kind of my first round with getting financing, is the resolution is required. I could have last month come forward with a resolution, and you could have either chosen to go with the financing or using reserves, but either way, that rate would have been locked in. The one thing is, once I lock in that rate, we have 60 days to close to keep that rate. So, you know, so next time, even though maybe the choice hasn't been made to finance, I might lock in that rate. And then if we choose not to use it, I was told we're not obligated to choose the financing. But if it got kicked back to finance and stuff like that, then, you know, it would prolong it. But so I did learn from this, and hopefully next time we can be a little clearer. I can be a little clearer and have all the pieces in place.
Thank you. First, is there any public comment on this item?
Yes, I have a written comment to read.
Okay, please do.
From Doreen Liberto, CCSD board members and audience. According to the June 30th, 2023 audit of financial statement, the CCSD has substantial long-term liabilities. A few of the financial encumbrances are certificates of participation, $23,359,200 for water, wastewater infrastructure improvements, TPB investment loan agreements for the water system, 8.9 to 13.4 million with interest. The Municipal Finance Corporation loan agreement, $367,557 original loan with $160,974 balance. In addition, there is a reported net pension liability for the miscellaneous plan and safety plan. How can the CCSD board support taking out another loan? How can the CCSD board consider taxing, benefit assessing, raising fees when the budget has not been managed? It is time for the board to stop spending, taxing, benefit assessing, and raising rates. Doreen Liberto.
Thank
I
you.
have no other
Thank you.
comments.
Any public comment from those present? I have an apology to make because I realized on the consent agenda I did not call for public comment. I don't know if anybody wants to say something, it would be worth hearing, but I lost track of the of that item. Was anybody wanted to comment?
No, I
Good,
never saw
that's good,
any
thank you.
hands raised.
Yes, that was my confusion. I apologize for it. I'll bring this back to the board for discussion. Is there any? If there's no discussion, we just take a motion. Dr. Farmer.
I'm a little reluctant to make this suggestion or request of Ms. Fritz or any other staff member that would like to respond to Ms. Liberto's comment. Would anybody like to remark on the fact that we are spending so much money that is going to obviously make things more difficult for the ratepayers of the community? And how can we do a better job? I think that's what she's implying here, and that we're not doing that good a job. It just, how could I say I feel a little bit frustrated with that comment? That particular description of how we're endeavoring to run the district in as efficient and responsible a fashion as possible. That's.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's just my feeling of frustration. That's all.
Yeah, I would maybe the way to frame this is because in connection with the discussion of this particular item, what is our debt situation in terms of our ability to take on new debt, and what effect would this have on it actually, and how we, our liquidity and our liabilities. I mean, General Manager McElhaney?
So I'll answer that in the sense that, as Director Thomas stated, that we're doing well on our investments with the net return there, and that yes, we are financing this. We discussed it at the last board meeting on why we decided to finance that instead of pull it out of reserves, and that's because of SR4 negotiations and some other things that we may have to pull out of reserves in the future here within this year potentially. And so we thought it best to finance part of this. The other issue is we have staff reading now up to 2,300 meters manually. It's a project that has to get finished, and so that's a part of the infrastructure that we have to address. And so some of that has been budgeted. The other piece of it has not, and we chose the financing route. For the other comments, those were decisions made by previous boards, and those are the things that we are dealing with financially the best we can. But those are commitments prior to our arrival and even this board's arrival, and we're addressing those loans and making those payments and those debt services. I don't, okay. Ms. Fritz, if you have anything better to add to that, but that's where we are. So,
okay. Thank you. Ms. Fritz? Yeah.
No, I don't think I have anything to add, but I could, as far as what you were talking about, liquidity and
Yeah.
all of that stuff, and our ability to take on more debt and how that affects rates and everything else, I could, do something for maybe my next finance manager's
Well, it's good
report
to
to
do.
discuss that a little bit more.
Yeah, thank you. Any other, before we go on to a motion, any other comments or discussion? So we'll hear a motion.
I will move that we adopt Resolution 13-2024 approving the financing for water meters.
Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we adopt Resolution 13-2024 approving financing for water meters. Could I have a roll call, please?
Yes, Director Thomas,
Aye.
Director Dean,
Aye.
Director Farmer,
Aye.
Vice President Scott,
No.
President Gray.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Could I just say?
Yeah, Director, Vice President Scott, please.
Yes, thank you. I really would appreciate the list that our public gave us. I'd like to see that on a regular basis. Our outstanding debt.
Okay.
Right, we asked that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Mhm.
Thank you.
May I?
Oh, please.
Okay, so our outstanding debt is one of the notes at the end of our audit report. But I think we talked before about possibly having it at the end of our quarterly reports as well. So is that possible? I know it's difficult to do it on a monthly basis, but maybe if it's at the end of the quarterly budget reports, that would be helpful for the public.
Yeah. You're talking about a quarterly balance sheet?
Yeah.
A balance sheet. So it's assets, liabilities, short-term, long-term, standard balance sheet. Is that unaudited, of course? Yeah. Is that possible? Is that too
So a
much of a?
quarterly balance sheet or a quarterly listing of our debt are two very different things.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I'm happy with the quarterly listing of our debt.
Okay.
And that's what I was talking
Okay.
about. That's note 6 in our audit report, the list of our outstanding liabilities, our
Along with-
loan balances.
I think it's important,
Along
though.
with the basic terms.
Right.
Yeah.
Important to distinguish between current liabilities and, stuff that's due in a year and long-term, because the true picture of our current situation is what we owe right now.
yeah, and she, in mentioning the OPEB liabilities, like that is something that's determined by the auditors and by CalPERS once every year.
Yeah.
So that's not something that's changing
Yeah. Okay.
all of the time.
And if we had a quarterly, then we could maybe at each quarter show what was the previous quarter so that we can see it going down. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. I think we're ready for regular business. Speaking of quarterly reports, item 7A, which is the discussion and consideration of the third quarter budget report for fiscal year 2023-24. And I'll hand this over to staff, either General Manager McElhaney and or Ms. Fritz. Mr. McElhaney.
Thank you, President Gray. Agenda item 7A, discussion and consideration of third quarter budget report for fiscal year 2023-2024. I'll just touch lightly on this and then hand it over to Ms. Fritz, but during the third quarter of the fiscal year 23-24, there were no budget adjustments. The board adopted the CIP list, has been updated to reflect activities from July 1st, 23 to March 31st, 24. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Fritz.
Yes, Fritz.
So this third quarter report was brought before the Finance Committee on April 23rd. And there is more than 75% through the fiscal year budget. And there's no real significant report. We have no budget adjustments to report for this quarter. Some in the general fund, you'll see the revenues are lagging a little bit. We're missing some of the property taxes, which we just received earlier this week, a large chunk of property taxes. So, we're getting caught up. So that's one thing you'll notice in the general fund is a lot of the revenues are lagging behind the expenditures, which is not uncommon for this time. For the water fund, the revenues were more than expenditures up through this quarter. And the wastewater was a little bit behind, but that was just some debt service payments and such. We're in the process of doing our last billing for the fiscal year, so we're getting really close to getting some really clear numbers on where we're going to end this year. The capital project list is updated to reflect current year activity. So far this year on the approved CIP projects. And I think that's all that I wanted to highlight. So if you have any questions, if you do want me to go through department by department, I can do that. But those are the highlights.
I'll just stick with questions, I think, from the board members. Dr. Dean.
I just wanted to confirm that when we get the preliminary budget report for 24-25, that is when we will be seeing the updated format for the CIP list, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Is there any public comment on this item? Ms. Dodson? No. Anyone in the hall want to comment? Okay. I'll proceed back to the board here for discussion and motion. Do I hear a motion? Or okay, Vice President Scott.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion.
Yes, please.
I would like to accept and approve the third quarter budget report for FY 2023-24.
Second?
Second motion.
Yeah, thank you. It's been moved and seconded that this board accept and approve the third quarter budget report for fiscal year 2023-24. Roll call, please.
Yeah. Vice President Scott,
Aye.
Director Dean,
Aye.
Director Thomas,
Aye.
Director Farmer,
Aye.
President Gray.
Aye. Thank you, everybody. I think we can probably wind up here without taking a break since we're almost to the end. We're on, I think, the final item here, which is future agenda items. And this is opportunity for members of the board to present, proposals for future agenda items. Also in public comment, people can do the same. First of all, though, I want to get, as we usually do, have Ms. Dodson give an update on what currently is already lined up for future agendas.
Sure. We have consideration of approval of an agreement with for consultant services with Moss, Levy, and Hartzheim for professional auditing services and performance of the district's fiscal year 23-24 audit. Consideration of adoption of a resolution approving updated district personnel policies, procedures, and rules. Consideration of adoption of the CCSD's Workplace Violence Prevention Plan. A public hearing to discuss and consider adoption of a resolution confirming the 2023 Fire Hazard Fuel Reduction Program itemized cost report of the CCSD. Public hearing to discuss and consider adoption of a resolution confirming the itemized report to collect delinquent solid waste collection and disposal charges on the county tax roll. A public hearing to discuss and consider adoption of a resolution approving a fire suppression benefit assessment CPI adjustment at the rate of 4.5% for fiscal year 24-25 and confirming the itemized report to collect the assessment on the county tax rolls. Discussion and consideration of the 24-25 rate adjustments to water and sewer rates and adoption of a resolution establishing the said rates. Discussion and consideration to direct staff to advertise for an open position on the R&I committee. Discussion and consideration of adoption of the climate change planning and policy recommendations by the staff and R&I committee, and discuss and consider forwarding the recommendations to the policy committee for the creation of the climate change adaptation policy. Consideration of adoption of a resolution requesting consolidation of the CCSD 2024 election with the November 5th, 2024 general election. Public hearing to discuss and consider adoption of a resolution approving the CCSD preliminary budget for fiscal year 24-25 and approving a resolution establishing the fiscal year 24-25 appropriations limit. A public hearing to receive community input on the draft project description for the Water Reclamation Facility Coastal Development Permit application and direct staff to file the draft project description with the County of San Luis Obispo Department of Planning and Building staff for final evaluation, input, and direction. Discussion and consideration of the 24-25 annual water shortage assessment report. Discussion and consideration of extension of the outstanding People Self-Help Housing Project intent to serve letter. Discussion and consideration of adoption of the updated investment policy. Update the CCSD Board of Directors regarding the countywide evacuation plan and Cambria's fire prevention plan. Discussion and consideration of the district vehicle use policy and adoption of a resolution approving the same. And finally, discussion and consideration of adoption of policy 1055, the legislative advocacy policy recommended by the staff and the policy committee.
Thank you, Ms. Dodson. Go back to the board now. Anything that she left out?
I'm assuming that's more than just June.
I was gonna, that's
Oh, no.
that was going to be my question.
That extends well, I think, in July and maybe a little bit.
No.
Wait, is that all June?
That's all of June.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Oh my gosh, we're going to have some long meetings.
Okay. It may, well, we'll see. I mean, sometimes, I guess it's just pretty much, there's, we'll see. We'll see what happens. It's a challenge. Anyway, Director Farmer, yeah.
So, Ms. Dodson, it sounds as if these two meetings here that we've had in May, that between the two of them didn't even amount to like 4 hours, that we should really embrace what just happened, because it sounds like there's a lot going on in the next month. Right?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be a busy month.
Uh, but you remember, you can suggest future agenda items for later, for beyond June or July. I mean, so if you wish to, Director Thomas.
Right, and no, I'm just waiting for those words of thank you, Haley. I know that you'll send that to us tonight, and you probably already have, because wow, is maybe to paraphrase Director Farmer, hang on for the ride in June.
No, I just want, I know I'm interrupting President Gray
No,
here,
it's
but
okay.
when we get elected to do this job, and there's times when things seem to be, wow, they're just kind of coasting, the majority of the time, and I think I'm speaking for all the directors, this is basically a full-time job. And if you're not, how can I say this? You're either working on something or you're thinking about what you need to work on. And this particular month, we just got somewhat fortunate. And it was almost like take a deep breath and relax for a moment, because obviously there's much more on the horizon here. So I don't know if I should have even said that, but that's in case
really
people
good-
are wondering. I shouldn't add this, but I noticed, maybe I'm paying too much attention to social media, but I saw someone actually make the observation that we get paid a lot of money to be on this board. And not only that, we get health benefits too. So I just want to let folks know that is not true. Thank you.
Okay, Director Thomas.
So I just have
That's
to,
accurate. We don't get health benefits.
I just have
Thomas.
to add to that. Right, I got lucky taking vacation a couple of weeks ago, and likewise, Director Dean, good timing and bon voyage.
Yeah. I want to open this to public comment. Does anyone in the present here want to comment on this item, or anyone online?
No.
Okay, thank you. Hearing no comment and no more suggestions from the board members, I will hereby adjourn this meeting at 2:57 p.m. Thank you. It sounds, oh.